What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 30 of Scary Sundays. So, today I'm going to get a little more vulnerable with you guys. So, grab some eggnog and a blanket, get comfortable, and buckle up because today we're going deep. So, at this time of the year, at the end of the year, for those of you who follow musical artists on Instagram, you may notice that a lot of artists start posting their Spotify Wrapped pages, which is basically like a breakdown of how you did that year on Spotify. So it'll show you like how many streams you had, how many listeners you had, how many hours people streamed your music on Spotify. And honestly, it's a really cool feature. I think it's super dope that Spotify does that. It's a really cool thing to see like how artists are doing. And I think it also helps artists connect to their fans because they can kind of share a little bit of the back end numbers that fans might not otherwise know about. So my experience with Wrapped this year was interesting because for the last, I think the first year that I posted my Spotify Wrapped was 2018. And I think that year, I think I ended the year with like 4 million streams or something. And then 2019, I had 7 million streams. Like my numbers pretty much almost doubled. And so I remember at the end of 2019 being really excited to post my Wrapped because I was super excited to share with my followers, with my fans, that like share the growth that I had experienced, right? Like share that trajectory on Spotify. And then in 2020, my numbers went down, like almost got cut in half again, back to I think like 4 million or something. So naturally, I wasn't as excited. And this year, they continued to go down, and now they're at like, I think they were like, it was like 1.4 million or something. And long story short, I didn't end up posting it on my profile because, to be totally honest with you guys, I felt like insecure about posting my Wrapped because I was like, damn, like my numbers decreased so much over the last 2 years. And especially, you know, like when you see all these artists posting like, oh, look, my numbers went up, and like I look how much I grew this year or whatever. And I think I did post it on my story, and just was like, thanks for listening. But, you know, there was a part of me that was kind of like disappointed and bummed out and like kind of getting down on myself because I was like, oh my God, like what's happening? Like, how come this is like the opposite direction that I should be going in, right? Like we're so conditioned to like everything needs to be going up, up, up constantly. And so I want to address a couple like parts of this and just sort of how I broke it down in my head. And, you know, on one level, like I'm super grateful that more than one person listens to my music. You know, like one stat that was like insane was that there were like 23 people that that I was like the top artist for, which is like crazy. And you know, so humbling. And just the fact that anybody listens to my music is amazing, but it's that comparison mindset to previous years and also comparing to other artists, like seeing way bigger artists that are like, I had like 100 million streams or 500 million streams, or like if you want to go all the way to the biggest artists, like billions of streams, and just kind of playing that comparison game and how quickly that becomes a recipe for unhappiness and dissatisfaction. So I think, you know, reminding myself that the fact that anybody is listening at all is such a beautiful thing. But more the point of this video is to dive deeper into why those Spotify numbers have gone down. And as I started diving into it, I was able to discover a few things about my creative process, a few things about the industry, how the industry has changed, how my process has changed, that sort of helped me make peace with those, with that seeming decrease in progress, we could say, which is really just one metric from one streaming service, right? And be okay with it. And I kind of want to share that whole process with you guys because, like I mentioned at the beginning, you know, at first I was super kind of like down because, especially for artists, you know, in our industry, it's already so unregulated and like subjective that we actually don't have very many ways of measuring success, like quantitative, tangible ways that we can point to and say, look at this growth, right? Like, look at this trajectory. And I think that's why it's brilliant that Spotify does the Wrapped, because it's kind of their way of showing to artists, hey, here's something that you can send to promoters or bookers or whatever, like, and kind of like get a snapshot of how big you are as an artist. So I think from Spotify's perspective, it's a cool idea, but it's also important to remember that there are so many different ways to be an artist, and there's so many different ways to define success. And that's kind of what I want to dive into this video. And, I think like the first principles of what I'm going to talk about are probably applicable to any field, certainly any creative field, but especially for people listening who are musical artists or who, maybe have a Spotify Wrapped of their own, or have been like kind of seeing all these other artists posting theirs. I think this could really help and add a lot of value for you guys. So we're going to take it back to the end of 2019 when I dropped my first album. And, a lot of those songs that I was putting out, which ended up becoming some of my, to this date, some of my most sort of like popular in terms of streaming, like highest stream songs, were on that album. Like, for example, Arthi or Deepest Ocean. And I remember back in the day when I first started making music, I saw at that time that, okay, because I'm independent, right? Because I'm not signed to a label. I had a couple tracks, like one-off singles that I signed to labels, but apart from that, for the most part, I've been pretty much independent. I saw the potential that if I can actually figure out a way to get a substantial amount of streams on Spotify, if I can figure out a way to get on some big Spotify playlists, not only will that help my career as an artist and help me get exposed to more people, but I'll actually be able to make some tangible money. This is not, I don't want this to turn into a conversation about like how, like whether or not it's fair, the percentages that Spotify pays artists. I think that's a whole different discussion. But one thing is for sure, like if you're an independent artist and you are getting like millions and millions of streams, which granted, not everybody, like most people aren't, you can make like decent money on Spotify. It's actually not as bad as it's made out to be. I think a lot of people who complain about the streams, I'm not saying that they're not justified, because the streams are still like an infinitesimal fraction of what they could be given what Spotify's keeping as a company. But overall, like I think a lot of people who complain are complaining because maybe they signed a bad deal with a label, and so they had to give away 50% of their streams. And then it's like, yeah, you're getting half of what you should be getting. But that's neither here nor there. So anyway, I actually got a lot of success based on streams on Spotify in 2019 and the early part of 2020. And I attribute that to a couple things. Firstly, the way that I was making music, like the actual approach that I was taking towards my creative process, was very much focused on getting streams. Because I thought at the time that if I can get onto some big playlists, right? If I can get onto like big electronic dance playlists on Spotify, for example, or like the big Spotify India playlists, which aren't really that big compared to like the regular like dance playlists. But if I can get on these playlists, I'll get the attention. I'll get the attention of, I didn't really know who at the time, and that's kind of the point we're gonna get to later. But it was just like people in the industry will know about me, and like that will help my career, and the right people will find me. And it was still this like subtle kind of like fairy tale hope that if I can just like get in front of the right person, they'll take over and do it for me, and which is a hope that I think in order to become a successful and sustainable independent artist, you kind of have to just like kill that hope. But we'll get to that in a little bit. So my actual way that I was even arranging the songs was very much catered to getting onto Spotify playlists. So like I would consciously think about like, okay, people on Spotify in a streaming environment, they don't have a long attention span, so I can't make the intro super long. So I got to get right to the point, get right into the first verse or whatever it is. And most of my songs, if you listen to them, with the exception I would say Arthi, which was like kind of a freak occurrence that just like it just caught fire somehow, and like that arrangement is like very different. And when I was making it, I had no idea that like almost didn't even put it out. Maybe that's why I did so well, but that's a different topic. But a lot of the other ones that did well, like Shanti or Deepest Ocean, I consciously was producing them for the streaming environment. So that was reason one. Reason number two was that I was able to, I think due to a combination of definitely a little bit of it was luck, but also putting myself in the right positions and being prepared in those positions, I was able to cultivate relationships with some influential people at Spotify, people who had a say in terms of the editorial playlisting at Spotify. And that allowed me to get on, like when my album came out, I was put on the cover of one of the playlists. I got on a bunch of big electronic playlists. I remember when Shanti came out, it got added to African Heat, which is like one of the biggest Afro pop, Afro beat playlists. And so I actually had a lot of success getting onto a lot of playlists. So at the end of 2019, my streams, my Spotify Wrapped was like super impressive, right? It was like 7 million streams and like 2.4 million listeners and like hundreds of thousands of hours listened. And I remember like feeling really proud of myself, and I was like, and feeling really excited to like flex that on Instagram basically, and like put it out and be like, check me out, like kind of thing. And what I want to shed light on is that for all of that optical success, I'm not so sure how much that really did for me in terms of actually building a sustainable fan base. And here's why. Because the reason I got so many streams was because I was put onto a lot of huge playlists. So for example, like Shanti, like I said, was added to an African playlist and a bunch of other ones. And, now it's up to like 800, close to 900,000 streams. It will probably be at 1 million at some point next year. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's 1 million ShiShi fans. That just means that a lot of those streams are from people that just happen to really like the playlist that Shanti was put on. You know what I'm saying? So what that showed me was that, okay, yes, streams are important for optics. And at a tangible material level, they're important because you can actually make money. Like I was pretty much living off of royalties for about 18 months, or about a year actually, I would say, like where I was really able to just like kind of live off them and like chill and like not really need to do other stuff. And I'm not in that position anymore. Like I got to figure out other ways to make money because my royalties have gone way down because I haven't been able to maintain those streams. So on one level, that would seem like, okay, like I'm going backwards, I'm going downhill. But actually, those royalties didn't necessarily translate into real, authentic fans, right? Like real, true fans who are gonna like ride or die with you. Like they're gonna buy your merch. They're gonna go to your shows. When I drop some NFTs next year, spoiler alert, they're gonna bid on those NFTs, right? Like they're gonna be part of your community that you're building. And what I've realized since then, due to just kind of paying attention to the way that the industry is moving and the way that things like crypto and just Web 3.0 in general are influencing artists' ability to monetize in unique ways, and also the fact that COVID kind of forced a lot of artists to get more creative because touring, one of their biggest revenue streams, was taken away from them. Because of all of that, I'm actually seeing that getting lots of streams on Spotify is just one of many potential pieces of the pie, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be a piece of the pie. So the fact that my streams have gone down, on one hand, it was like I felt kind of bad about it, and I was like, damn, like I don't want to I feel weird like posting celebrating this because like in my mind I'm like, why would I celebrate if the streams are going down? But And that's why I didn't post it. I like posted on my story or whatever, but I didn't feel the need to like flex it, even though in isolation, I'm still very proud of the fact that of the numbers that I had this year. Like I'm still very grateful, feel very blessed to have done those numbers anyway. But what I realized was that my focus, like my actual attention, has shifted away from trying to maximize my Spotify streams and has shifted towards trying to build a community that is sustainable and that really feels like a family that can actually support me as an artist in the long term. I'm talking about like years and decades, right? Like an actual community. And I think that's something that any human being on the planet who has the internet and has a desire and has a message that they want to get out there, and has the desire to put it out there and the work ethic to do so, can do that, right? It doesn't just need to be about like me because I'm an artist or whatever. Like any of you guys watching this video can do that too with whatever it is that you're creating and trying to bring forth. If it brings value to people, right? If it brings value, then people will want to invest in it and they'll want to invest in you. And so what I realized was like I was feeling so down about not having the same level of streams, not having the same level of quantitative success on Spotify. But that's because, for one, everything's constantly changing. Like the relationships that I had that helped me get onto those playlists, none of them work at Spotify anymore. It's like new people fill those positions. So that exposed a vulnerability in my business strategy, right? As an artist, it's like if my business plan is just to rely on relationships that I have with people at Spotify, and basically even with those people, if my monetization strategy, if my actual livelihood, my income that I'm trying to predictably and sustainably build and grow and depend on as an artist is dependent on some person at Spotify choosing whether or not to put me on a huge playlist, that's just not sustainable. And I learned that. Over the last 2 years. I've literally experienced that by seeing how, the songs that I'm putting out now, yeah, they're getting playlisted here and there, but it's not this at the same level at all. And I know I'm not the only one. I know I've also talked to a lot of other artists who maybe they even have the same level of streams, but the actual per stream value of those streams is going down. So they're making less money because of the way that Spotify pays its artists, which is they take everything and put it in a pot. And it's not like everybody gets the same fraction of a stream. If you contribute to a larger percentage of that pot, you actually get more per stream, which is why, for example, like Drake will make more per stream than I will. And so the more music that people make, which is going up every year, the less those streams are going to pay back, right? So this is something that a lot of artists have been experiencing, whether or not they're publicly talking about it. And so what I realized was that my focus now is, it's not that I don't care about Spotify. Like I still am, always trying to get on playlists and everything. And whenever I get on a playlist, like you guys see on my story, I always post about it and like big up Spotify or Spotify India or whatever. But what I've realized is that I care way more about building a genuine, authentic community and fan base by doing things like this, like Scary Sunday, and just being super vulnerable and real with you guys, or by trying to get creative about what I can put out there apart from just the music, right? That can actually add value to you guys, that can help make your lives better, or easier, or whatever it is, than just getting a ton of streams on Spotify just because like it looks good for optics, or even because it will make me money in the short term, because it's just not necessarily a sustainable business model. Whereas building a community that will invest in you, and eventually with crypto can invest in you and invest in themselves at the same time, is a much more sustainable route as an artist. So I kind of wanted to just talk about this because it's been on my mind. It's just that time of year, like everybody's posting their Wrapped, and it's interesting. And I've been diving really deep into the investable layer of music and how artists can use NFTs to create really cool, creative ways to monetize their music and bring their fans along for the ride, right? So like one of the things that I'm learning about and want to implement next year with my EP, and this is kind of like a sneak peek for those of you who are, if you're watching this video and you've made it this far, 20 minutes in, like, I consider you a real one, right? Like, you guys are the ones that deserve to hear what I'm about to say, which is that I want to create, because I'm independent, I can do this. I want to create albums and singles where I auction off NFT style 49% of the master ownership of the song. And that way you guys can buy it. You guys can buy a fraction of that song, a fraction of that ownership. And then you actually own that song. So if that song blows up or gets on the radio or gets synced or licensed on a TV station, you get money. And we all grow together, and it's this ever-growing abundant pie. And that's the beautiful thing about crypto and the investable layer of music through NFTs. So, that's just an example of the way that my mindset has shifted now and how I'm thinking about building a community as the first and foremost priority, which is something I honestly was not really thinking about 2 years ago when my Spotify numbers were like so dope or whatever. And I felt like I was like flexing, posting them on Instagram. And I think this is a really relevant message for any artist out there, especially musicians, but really anybody out there who's trying to create art and create a community around that art online. So I hope this was informative and insightful and sort of helped you guys, especially for those of you who are musicians, but anybody else watching, like, just think about what you're doing if you are doing something along these lines in a more sort of forward-thinking way. And just, I guess the thesis of this video, the main takeaway is that things are changing so quickly, right? So it's important to track your growth, but it's also important to track what measures of growth are important year to year, because those things are changing. Like, for me, I'm just not that bothered that my Spotify numbers are going down. But I would be if I wasn't thinking about things differently, right? If Spotify was like the end all be all, then like that would be a serious problem. But it just simply isn't. So I hope this video is informative. Thank you guys so much. As you can tell, I'm like gassed about this because I've just been I spent all weekend just like listening to podcasts and diving into this stuff. So leave some comments with your thoughts. DM me if you want to continue the conversation. And love you guys. Peace.